Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Championship Sunday preview, brought to you in association with QuinnBet. There are just 2 football weekends left in the season, with a brief break in the middle while we draw breath ahead of Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. We'll be there in a fortnight's time, but which 2 teams out of the Patriots, Broncos, Seahawks and Rams will be taking to that field? Kieran Boyle, Brian O'Leary and Shane Brennan with me, Conor Brophy, to preview the AFC and NFC Championship games, otherwise known, of course, as the Super Bowl semi-finals. We start at Mile High Stadium in Denver. That's the 8 p.m. game on Sunday night between the number 1 seeded Broncos and the number 2 seeded New England Patriots in the AFC. The Patriots, Shane, we'll start with you. Travel to the Broncos very much in expectation, I suppose, as much as hope, because of that bittersweet news from, depending on which side of the fence you're on, from the Broncos after the conclusion of their game against the Bills in the divisional round, when we learned that Bo Nix wouldn't be taken to the field. And Jarrett Stidham, drafted, of course, by the New England Patriots before being cruelly discarded on the pile of quarterbacks that Bill Belichick ruined after he said goodbye to Tom Brady. And he's washed up, wouldn't you know, in Denver, and could be about to have the ultimate revenge game, although the odds are against it. The Patriots 4.5-point favorites on the road.
Bizarre that the Patriots are 4.5-point favorites in a stadium which the Patriots have gone into 4 times in the playoff and lost 4 times in the playoffs over New England's history. Out of all the achievements of the Brady-Belichick era, winning a playoff game in Denver was not one of them. Interestingly enough, I spent most of this week actually watching back the AFC Championship game for 10 years ago. How things have changed. The quality is still HD, but everything else seems to have changed so much. And in that game was a Denver story in which a quarterback who, in fairness, it was Peyton Manning, but Peyton Manning in his, as some people were called, his noodle arm season, managed to get enough done whilst the Denver defense was playing absolutely superb football. And
I'm just laughing here because I watched the Saturday Night Live clip of Peyton Manning again. I know I'm addicted to Saturday Night Live. It's one of my favorite ever. I just, in the lead up to this game, I couldn't help watching it again.
I love that clip. It's like lettering the ball to the back of the kids. Oh, brilliant. I actually look. I love this in there.
I mean, I'm not saying I have, and I'm not saying I haven't.
But anyway, getting on to the 2016 AFC Championship game, that the story of that game was, I'm not going to underplay obviously Peyton Manning because he's Peyton Manning, right? But I mean, it's defense first football in Mile High. Try to be physical, try to wear the team down in the altitude, and find a way to victory there. And that's what the Denver are looking at here. The Patriots are coming into this as favorites. My professional opinion, we all have our professional and personal opinions. My professional opinion, and probably my personal as well, is that it's a crying shame that Bo Nix isn't in this game. I think it really takes away from the kind of spectacle that we can expect. But obviously, as somebody who's watching this with Patriots tinted glasses, it opens up a great opportunity, because what Denver haven't proven so far this year is the fact that they have much of a run game. And Bo Nix has been he's like himself and Sean Payton have been so closely tied together in terms of the Project Denver that once he's gone out of there, what do we expect from Sean Payton? But the more I sit back here, I was speaking in the early part of this week and almost saying like it was a foregone conclusion that the Patriots are going to find somewhere to go in, considering that Drake May's already faced 2 of the top 5 defenses in the league. There's no reason why you can't go in and face the third and manage to find a way to just about get it done, even if the offensive line, as I was saying in the live show, doesn't hold up very well and didn't hold up very well against Houston. But then you hear all these people talk about Stiddy, Julian Edelman and Gronk were talking about how great of a guy he was and how laser throw on his laser throws and all this kind of thing. And there's a lot of people coming out and saying that actually you might have more to him than people expect. Now, some of that maybe there's a bit of talking up, and by the time we actually get there, he completely flames out. But let me go back to Sean Payton's record with backup quarterbacks.
He sounds like that hoariest of GAA cliches, flying and training. He's flying and training, Stiddy, I tell you, some man.
Yeah, even the name Stiddy, you already imagine him playing for the Kerry Footballers or something like that. But here's the thing. I mean, Sean Payton's record with backup quarterbacks is supreme. I think I heard Mike Florio earlier on saying that when Drew Brees is injured, it was a 12-0, 13-0. I'm not quite sure the exact stat, but it's something in that mark. We remember a big chunk of that was Teddy Bridgewater as backup for Drew Brees in 2019 when he went 5-0. With a 99 passer rating, and he threw twice as many touchdowns as interceptions. If there's any coach that can get something out of a backup quarterback, and obviously he's been in that building, he's been kept in that building as the backup for a reason. They must feel he's got something in there.
He's one of the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the league. He's been there for 3 seasons. He was the hand-picked backup quarterback by Sean Payton, who, as you say, knows a thing or two about signal callers. Like, this is no off-cut or afterthought. Stidham is there because Sean Payton wants him there.
Very much so. And even though, like this, a stat that I rolled out on the AV Club earlier on during the week is that the Broncos are the only team in the league to have not given a snap to a backup quarterback this year, and they were the only team in the league not do the same last year as well, which obviously knocks the potential in him. But it also means that nobody's any tape to really look at him. He's the most complete unknown entity going into an AFC Championship game that we can remember. Even when you're talking about Nick Foles and his season when he was a backup in Philadelphia, people were at least able to see what he was able to do. He had his time on the field. You were able to plan for him, but then Doug Peterson was able to plan for him even better. He's a complete unknown for this Patriots defense to come up against. So it's not as much of a foregone conclusion as I thought it was if you asked me 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I was fully rocking him with confidence. But the more I think about this, the more I see a path to victory with Denver with a strong defense against that Pats O-line. I mean, all they really need is a turnover. You have to remember, Drake May's given up 6 turnovers in the last 2 games. All they need is a turnover and a short field and get the punch in, or a pick 6 and win a 14-10 type game. That said, I'm still picking the Patriots for 2 key reasons. Firstly, you can't take away, I think, from the job that this Patriots defense has done in the last 2 weeks at a time when actually not many people were expecting them to do so. All of the pressure and all the expectation has been on the offense, what Drake May, MVP candidate, now officially as of today, candidate can do, what the run game has done, what Josh McDaniels has done in coaching both situations. I actually think the defense plus the game calling and the game day coaching of Vrabel on that side of the ball, I think has really shown himself to be quite important and quite pivotal in the last couple of playoff games. I think it was really impressive in the way that they handled themselves against Houston last week. And I think they actually might have enough to, if there's momentum leaving, find a way to bring it back on the Patriots, on the Broncos, excuse me. And secondly, if the Broncos don't have a run game to fall back on, they might be relying on too many passes. We saw that earlier in Arizona with Jacoby Brissett, how that kind of thing ends up becoming, you could potentially become an interception machine. And in that situation, do you then trust Trayvon Henderson or Ramondre Stevenson just to run the rock enough for New England if Drake May is being shut down by those corners, which you know that Denver can do? Yeah. So look, I think this game is going to be closer than people think. It's definitely not a foregone conclusion the way that a lot of Patriots fans are talking about it as, but I'm still backing the Patriots have enough to win, especially the further we get into the second quarter or into the second half, because mainly of the coaching house of Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels.
Kieran Boyle, there's a lot of different potential keys to this game. One of the ones that I'm particularly interested in watching is how both teams run the rock. We saw the Patriots completely stuff the Texans last weekend, put everything on CJ Stroud, which is where CJ Stroud clearly didn't want it to be because he had a bit of a mare. I think they held Woody Marks to 1.6 yards per carry. They didn't necessarily run the ball brilliantly themselves. However, we also saw on the other side of it, the Denver Broncos defense, which does several things outstandingly well, if not better than any other team in the league. 68 sacks testifies to that, an almost record-setting mark for them. That's almost 4 sacks per game, which is just an unbelievably high number. But we also saw James Cook run all over them. Typically, they've been a lot better than that. They're up and down in terms of their ability to get RJ Harvey going as well. I see that as one of the most important things this weekend, particularly when you're rolling from a Broncos perspective with the backup quarterback behind. Let's also make clear here, the best offensive line in football.
Yeah, the best offensive line in football, arguably the best defense as well. However, the main issue for me is obviously with Bo Nix not being there. I hear all the stuff all week about Stidham and about he's the highest paid backup. Again, he hasn't played since 2023. His career total is 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. I hear a lot of people talking up the Broncos' opportunities and Broncos' chances. I'm struggling to see where it's going to happen because, like you said, RJ Harvey running the ball. If you're pinning your hopes on Stidham or RJ Harvey running the ball and getting some purchase out of this game, then I think you might be in for a surprise because this Patriots defense has been rocking and rolling in the playoffs. I mean, we saw what they did last week. I mean, I just think in the key parts, in the key components of this game, I just don't think that the Broncos even, talk with Peyton talking up Stidham is going to have enough weaponry to beat the Patriots. I think it'll be close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout in any way, but I think when you look at across the board and you look at all facets, offense, defense, and special teams. I think the Patriots have the edge, definitely in the running back department. I think, Henderson and Stevenson have the ability to bust off 50, 60-yard run just like that.
Travion Henderson is a home run hitter. Like, I mean, he is the poor man's, and I don't mean this as any disrespect to him, more it's the level that Saquon Barkley is at, but he's been the poor man's Saquon Barkley this season. He hits a gap and he is gone.
Yeah, I mean, he's an exciting player, and the two of them just complement each other. I mean, kind of like we'll talk with the Rams later on with Williams and Corum. But I think for me the run game is non-existent really with Denver. I think RJ Harvey has been struggling, and again, when you look at the other side of the field, you look at the run game that the Pats have. I think it's going to be a big factor. I know that there's been a lot of talk about Campbell and how he was smoked by Will Anderson last week. I firmly believe that. I'm not going to say he's going to play any better or he's going to block any better, but the Patriots are definitely going to put some more weapons on the left side and just kind of a couple of tight ends and just shore up that hole there and give him some support with maybe another blocking wide receiver. But for me, I mean, obviously with Drake May, we know he can throw the ball, but we also know the sacks and the fumbles. But I think the Stidham talk has been overplayed. I think a lot of people have bought into the Peyton. He's kind of mesmerizing the press and mesmerizing the media with the, don't worry about us, we'll be fine. We got Stidham back there. I don't see it at all. I think, this is not like it's week 5 and you're not throwing him in against the Arizona Cardinals. This is the championship game, and you're putting a guy who's been cold since 23 and expecting him to carry the offense and expecting him to be able to look down and be able to read blitzes, and he hasn't seen any of this stuff. So I'm concerned for the Broncos that this is the situation they have at quarterback. I hope that it doesn't detract and it doesn't turn into he gets sacked the first 2 or 3 plays of the game and it just turns into a non-event. But I hope it's a competitive game and I hope he has a good game. I'm just concerned that for his ability to make any kind of plays and to affect this team offensively in any way. I know for me, the only way that the Broncos are really going to get any kind of joy out of this game is if everybody plays with their hair on fire. They keep a clean game. Sutton and Mims catch every ball that comes near them. And the defense is, Benito's able to get to May and force a fumble or two, and they get maybe 14 points off of defense, because I don't think that they have the ability to score on offense. I mean, they already gave up 449 points against the Bills last week. So, yards against the Bills. So, I mean, if you get to them, they can be gotten at. So for me, I'm concerned about Stidham and his ability to read the game, and the Broncos' ability to score. I just hope they don't drag it down into like Shane said, a 14-10, 16-13 kind of game, and that it flows a little bit more. But I definitely give the offensive weapons. I give the Pats more of a chance with the offensive weapons that they have.
You raise a really good point there, which is that Sean Payton has played a blinder this week in talking Jarrett Stidham up, which is exactly the right thing to do. And I've even found myself succumbing to this notion as the week has progressed. And when this injury came to light, when we knew Bo Nix was going to be gone for this game, I thought, that's pretty deflating now. We've only got one championship game to look forward to, because this one's going to be pretty much a foregone conclusion with the Broncos rolling with a backup quarterback. What are the chances? And as the week progressed, I thought, actually, you know what? Like, why couldn't Jarrett Stidham get it done? And they've got so much talent on the field. Defense can hold them in the game. The best offensive line in football. If they can get the run game going, they can take a bit of the pressure off. And we watched Sam Darnold throw for 125 yards last week when the Seahawks absolutely dismantled the 49ers, and he didn't need to do any more because of everything else that they were able to do and how they put the absolute shackles on the 49ers. Why couldn't the Broncos do something like that? Then as the week has gone on, I heard somebody saying, yeah, I can't believe the Patriots are 4.5-point favorites on the road. And it suddenly stopped me in my tracks and made the scales fall from my eyes. I went, well, hang on a second. The Patriots are 4.5-point favorites on the road because a guy who hasn't played a regular season snap in 2 years is in the most important position on the other team. And what does that mean? That means in no way, shape, or form can the Broncos offense possibly have the entire playbook open, to your point, Kieran, because that's just not doable for a guy coming in at a week's notice. He knows the playbook, of course. He knows the O-line, of course. He's in a better position to succeed than a lot of backup quarterbacks in the league. But it's just not possible to get up to playoff caliber at that sort of turnaround. It's just, you can look at the Trent Dilfer experience and the Nick Foles experience, which you called out, Shane, and the Jeff Hostetler experience. It's not like we've never seen this happen. It wouldn't be a miracle beyond miracles. The guy can play, otherwise he wouldn't be there and he wouldn't be on that contract. And he's there precisely to do this, to hold down the fort should Bo Nix ever become injured. It's just such an unknown and it's such an uncertain factor, and it hamstrings clearly what the Broncos are going to be able to do on offense. And your whole case for the Broncos during the playoffs has been the defense can hold out, the defense can keep them in any game, but we need to see a little bit more from the offense if they're going to, to quote Mike Vrabel's line, if they're going to take out the big dogs in January. The big dogs come out to play in January is what Vrabel's been saying, getting his team ready. The Patriots haven't looked like they're world beaters either. And we were doing our watch along last weekend, Shane and Brian. One of the things we were kind of slightly worried about is that the Patriots just hadn't put the Texans away earlier. And now that's credit also to the Texans defense, who didn't allow them. And they did pull away in the end, but it was slightly concerning that Drake May had such a poor game, as you say, Shane, that he was so turnover prone. And they got to do something on the left side of that offensive line. Will Campbell, who's a rookie, has just found that this level is a little bit above his pay grade at this point in his career. And I don't think anybody doubts that he has the talent or that he'll get there eventually. It's just a lot to have on his plate, particularly when he's up against Nick Bonito, the most ferocious bagman, or one of the most ferocious bagmen in the league this year on a defense, which, as we said, racks up sacks for fun. But it's far from a perfect defense. If defense won championships, the Houston Texans will be playing this weekend. You need your offense to do more than a replacement level job in the playoffs. You need, at a time when QB ratings fall off a cliff because the best teams are coming out to play and everybody steps it up a level, including the Patriots. Shane, you've been marveling at how the Patriots have performed defensively over the last two games because, big time players show up in these big moments. To quote that great line from the Devil's Advocate again, can you impose your talent at will? This is what pressure does. It either makes you focus or it makes you fold. The Patriots, we've seen focus week after week. The Broncos defense, I just don't trust to be able to hold them in a game of this magnitude where the offense is going to be hamstrung. I think we've seen what the Jaguars did to them. We saw, to your point, Kieran, what the Bills did to them last week. I just don't think that they're as complete a unit as the Texans defense or the Seahawks defense that we're going to talk about. And I think we've seen them exposed too many times for my liking. They've had a relatively easy run schedule-wise. And, I know I've been harping on this point for a while. I could just see them getting taken out in the playoffs, even with home field advantage. And I see the Patriots as the team that are going to do it. Only if Drake May has a clean game and he's going to play better than he has done over the last two games. So why wouldn't he? He's in the MVP conversation for a reason. This is when you show your MVP chops. I trust him to do it. I trust Josh Daniels to have schemed up in the right way to make sure that he's protecting Will Campbell. And I think it's just so much to ask of Jarrett Stidham to come in and perform. He's going to have to play the game of his life, having not had enough rehearsal time to do so, and it's going to be the point at which I think we see the Broncos bow out and the Patriots advance to Super Bowl 60. Brian.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to go against all three of us here. I'm quite comfortable in where the Broncos are from a quarterback perspective, because when you look at backups coming in for teams, and you always see that initial kind of burst where they play quite well the first game, second game, I take it on board that the stakes are so high. It's the AFC Championship game. But we've seen in the past where quarterbacks come in initially for teams during the regular season. They play well first game, even play well second game. And then all of a sudden, over the course of 4 to 5 weeks, the cracks appear because teams get used to what they're looking at and they get an opportunity to look at the various different coverage or the content, and they scheme it into their plan in terms of what they can do to address this quarterback playing for the team. I don't think the Patriots will have had enough time to figure out what the plan is for this quarterback, because they just don't know. There's not enough film for him. And I think that kind of plays into Sean Payton's hand, because he is a master at putting a quarterback into a situation to go and win a game. Shane referred to earlier on the numerous quarterbacks in which he's had to work with, and he still found ways to navigate victories. I throw in Jameis Winston into the mix there. That's something we also forgot when he was in New Orleans. His interception count, across his career has been abysmal, but yet it came way down under Sean Payton, because Sean Payton knew how to manage the situation, even with him at quarterback slinging the ball from here to there and everywhere. And on Sunday, I think he will draw up a plan that just allows him. It won't be like if he goes in and tries to run the playbook essentially that Bo Nix has been running, whether it was last week or during the regular season. That's not going to work. I think he will have had an opportunity. And this isn't just something I imagine they just sit there and go, okay, this is the week we have to prepare for it. I imagine they've been working on this scenario for weeks. There's always going to be something in the background. You watch these programs where they're in the headset talking about what play they're going to call on third down and fourth down. Well, this is a scenario where during the season, I believe they would have looked at all these alternatives and scenarios where if we have to plug in Steady City, whatever you want to call them this week, into the situation. I'll throw another one in there, which we haven't reflected on. And I know it's a bit of a wild X factor, but
I've just been looking at NFL backup quarterback performances, Brian, to see if we could back up. For every, as you say, for every Nick Foles, there's a Spencer Rattler who lost all 6 of his games as a backup.
Yeah, so but I wouldn't put him in. I wouldn't. Yeah, well,
you wouldn't put him in that bracket. You wouldn't put him in that bracket. Why? We haven't seen him play.
Well, he's isn't he one of the highest paid backups in the league? So obviously Sean Payton has a trust factor there that he believes he can go in and win a game. You don't pay someone the enormity of what they're paying him unless they're convinced he can be the man to step in at the right time. I'll throw another X factor in. We're throwing another one in there. We're suggesting they don't have an effective run game. It's a bit of a wild card, but they're going to go with it and see how it plays out. J.K. Dobbins is being activated this week, so it's no longer a one-headed monster in Harvey and McLaughlin. It's a two-headed monster. It's a three-headed monster, and J.K. Dobbins will probably lean on him with his experience in Baltimore. Had a great season in the Chargers. I know it's a risk because he's come back off an injury, could quickly go out of the game, but I think he's the kind of guy that could come in and alleviate the pressure on the other two having to run the ball. And can they run the ball effectively? You called it, Conor, like last weekend. It was abysmal, but the Texans were abysmal. Let's be fair. I don't believe the Broncos are going to be abysmal. I mean, I've been stressing this for weeks that if they find themselves as the 1 seed, and they do have home field advantage, whilst they didn't play very well last week, they still get over the line, and that's what it feels like. They don't necessarily have to play well to get over them, and just do have to do enough offensively to keep themselves in the game. And then, I'm not saying things go their way, but 4 quarters in an AFC Championship game are wild, and all it takes is for 1 or 2 situations to go their way. Look, I'm leaning Broncos. I've just had this niggling feeling for quite some time, and I've expressed it within the group that I just feel this is the year in which the Broncos are going to make it back to the Super Bowl. 10 years removed from Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara, they made it. You touched on Peyton Manning being the quarterback, different world back then, but essentially they won the Super Bowl despite Peyton Manning that year, which is probably disservice to Peyton Manning because he's a stellar quarterback. But despite still him being a quarterback from, I believe they'll win on Sunday and get to the Super Bowl, and then we're in a situation where we've gone to San Francisco to watch the Broncos play in Santa Clara. Super Bowl 60, 10 years on, Broncos are back in the Super Bowl. And Sean Payton, again, pulls out a masterful performance. Denver Broncos on Sunday.
Ready, steady, go. Orange Crush, Mark 3 all the way for Brian. We'll take a quick break before we preview the NFC Championship game.
You know great odds. You're in control. You always bet responsibly. And you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
The NFC Championship game takes place at 11:30 on Sunday night. The 6th-seeded LA Rams travel to Lumen Field to take on the number 1-seeded Seahawks and the 12s in Seattle. The Seahawks favoured by 2.5 points at home, Kieran, in what is a very, very tight matchup. Another one of these trilogies that we're now seeing in the divisional round. We've seen some very entertaining battles over the course of this season from divisional rivalries spill over into the playoffs. This is a pretty nice one to have in the NFC Championship game. The Rams and Seahawks, an absolute shootout in week 16 of the regular season. Seahawks coming out the right side of that one, 38-37. There was 2 points between them when the Rams won 21-19 in the first of the trilogy earlier on this season. So there is literally 1 point between these two teams on aggregate over 2 games. It couldn't be better poised for this championship.
Yeah, there's been some great games this season between the two of them, especially the one in Week 16 when the Rams went up by a good chunk and then ended up losing. That was a nice offensive performance from both teams, and I think we're going to see a similar situation. Yeah, you're right. This is probably going to be a slightly closer. I think it was 2.5 for the Seahawks. It's probably going to. I think it's going to drop, but the closer we get to the game, it's your classic pick 'em. I mean, both teams. It's a phenomenal offense in Seattle going up against a great defense with the Rams and vice versa. Both teams, you're struggling to see where the weaknesses are across the board. Both teams have got some stellar players. Smith and Jigba, Puka. You look around again. We scan both rosters, and we figure out, where's going to be the margin here, and what's going to be the key point, who's going to come out on top of this one. So, it's all set up really nice. I mean, you got two teams that know how to score, as opposed to the AFC game, which could be a slugfest or a defensive slugfest. I think this one, there's a lot more weapons out there. If I was the Rams, I'd be a little concerned about Stafford the last couple of weeks, especially last week. Notwithstanding the weather we saw in Chicago, but it should be not as cold or as brutal in Seattle. But just struggling with his accuracy. I mean, I think he had 47.6% completion rate against the Bears, and he struggled to get above 60% in five of the last 6 games. We saw the struggles he had throwing to Puka. He was wide. It just wasn't happening last week. And you can say what you like about the conditions. I mean, for me, I was surprised that both teams were slinging the rock like they were. But for me, the Rams, we saw how they used 13 personnel during the season, and we saw how McDonald was able to kind of adjust, especially in the second game in Week 16, how McDonald was able to adjust. So I'm looking to see, are the Rams going to bring out, I don't know, 7 tight ends? It feels like that's what they bring out. They stuff both sides of the line of scrimmage. So I'm looking to see,
Well,
is
it's
he really
really interesting on that, because I was watching one of the preview videos earlier, and I wasn't aware of this, but the Seahawks, as you might not be surprised to learn, are the number 1 team in terms of the QB rate allowed by their secondary to wide receivers. They're 16th in how they defend tight ends. So if you're coming up against a team that has a little bit of trouble with that position, the Rams are probably the worst matchup.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen what they have. I mean, they got Higbee, Ferguson, Parkinson out there. I mean, blocking tight ends, but they also got great hands. So, I'm sure we'll see. It'll be made a big point when they come out there, whether it's 12 or 13 personnel. But they're going to, McVay's going to, adjust accordingly, and it'll be great to see what McDonald does to counter it. I mean, again, notwithstanding Stafford's struggles of late and probably the last 5 or 6 weeks, and then you look at Darnold. I mean, the Seahawks seem to win in spite of him. They don't need him. I mean, obviously we saw last week it was the Walker show, but I think as the days go on, and the more kind of realization for Seahawks fans that Charbonnet's not out there is going to be a big factor. Charbonnet, for a lot of people who probably don't watch the Seahawks as much, is more of a battering ram. He gets the hard yards, maybe similar to the Lions with Gibbs and Montgomery. Charbonnet will go out, he'll get the big yards, the big heavy yards, and then he'll let Walker kind of finesse and go in for the touchdown. So they're going to miss that key component. So I want to see if it's going to be a case where the Velus Jones, I think, is their 3rd string running back. I don't think he's going to be a factor. But how are the Seahawks going to overcome the fact that they have literally got 1 running back, and the Rams know that, and everybody else knows that? How they're going to counter that? It's going to be, for me, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a back and forth game, because, like I said earlier, both teams have got some really, great weapons. The weather won't be a factor. They're going to be able to throw it around. Again, the Seahawks with their 12th man, that could be a factor, like Denver too. I think it's going to be a leveler, though. I don't think it's, when you get to this stage of the playoffs, I mean, we always talk about home field advantage, but we've seen so many teams in the past go as the road team in the championship game, go in and win the game, and it's almost like, it's a great leveler. Both teams played close in the 2 games they played this year, so I expect another close game. What's going to be the margin? I mean, it's really going to come down to how Stafford plays and how Darnold plays. As long as Darnold stays clean and doesn't turn the ball over, he doesn't need to do anything, because he's got the weapons on defense. And we talk about the Pats kind of no-name defense, but the Seahawks defense as well. I mean, they've just been, I don't want to say unheralded, but just the work that they put in. I talk about it, I think it was on Monday, just the work that they put into the camaraderie and the kill or be killed kind of mentality that they have. I think that's going to be the factor ultimately. I think it's just going to be a game that's going to be loaded with amazing plays, loaded with players that are going to ball out. It's going to come down to probably the last couple of minutes of the 4th quarter, and I'm hoping that it's a tight game. But what's really going to be interesting to see is what effect not having Charbonnet out there is for the Seahawks. Are they going to be able to just lean on Smith and Jigba, lean on the extra wide receivers that they'll use, or is it going to be a factor and it's going to be detrimental to their offense? But overall, it's going to be a great game. Two great teams going at it, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been pretty confident in my pick in this one all week, and as the week has gone on, I've been feeling less and less confident because, like, for me, these are the two best teams in the league, and I think honestly, whichever team wins this game goes on and wins the Super Bowl, unless there's some kind of freak injuries, and who would want to put that out there? And I won't even think about that any further. And I had picked the Seahawks.
You just did, Connor. You did.
Put that out there, and now I'll take it back. Yeah, sorry, don't you put that evil on me. I had picked the Seahawks earlier on in the week, and I am going to pick the Seahawks. But as the week has gone on, I've felt less and less confident about that because, as I said, I think these two teams are the best two teams in the league. I see the Seahawks as a championship caliber team, and a phenomenal job that Mike Macdonald and his coaching staff have done there over the last couple of years. You know, as we said before, at a time when the fashion is to pick an offensive-minded head coach and everybody's looking for the next Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or Ben Johnson, the Seahawks zigged when everybody else was zagging and went for Mike Macdonald, primarily because of the other offensive juggernauts that they have in their division. And it was absolutely the right choice. And both in terms of how they've deployed their draft capital, the great job that John Schneider has done. We've talked about it a couple of times of late in how he's handled both the free agents that they brought in and the guys that they've exited from the building to put together this roster. I think this is the best team in the league, and they have championship caliber. However, the Rams are a championship-proven team, and they have what it takes to succeed in the big moments in the playoffs. And we saw that exemplified in how they came out of Soldier Field with that win in a game where not everything went well, and a lot of things went quite poorly for them, not least, as you said, Kieran, the play of Matthew Stafford, who clearly, I think, is being affected by that injury, that finger injury on his throwing hand, can't be helping his accuracy. And we saw some of that in some really wayward throws manifested in his completion percentage at the end of that game. What they do really well, though, is, and Shane knows this only too well from the Patriots dynasty, they're able to key in on one or two things that their opponents do and take it away from them. And they're able to key in on an offensive perspective on one or two things that they think are going to really go well and make those the keys to the game. I think the Rams force the issue in a way that all great championship teams do. They're able to play to their strengths, and they're able to take away the strengths of the opposition. We saw them do that to the Bears at Soldier Field. That game didn't unfold in the way a lot of us thought it would, and a lot of that was down to how the Rams approached the task in front of them, particularly how they threw up a wall on the Bears' run game. It stopped them in short yardage situations. That ultimately was the key to that game. The Bears going for it on fourth down, going for it on third and short repeatedly, being stoned and turning the ball over and not being able to convert red zone opportunities in a way that could have put them over the top and given them a lead that they might have been able to hang on to at home, and coming up with big interceptions, forcing the Bears to go, or tempting the Bears to go big game hunting and finding a way to pick the ball off. 3 interceptions in that game against the Bears team that had not only excelled itself in terms of what they were able to take away and how they racked up turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, but very rarely gave the ball away during the regular season. Like, they'd single-digit interceptions thrown by Caleb Williams during the regular season, 3 in that one game, which was the difference between the two teams, or one of the main differences between the two teams at the end of the day. So what does that do in terms of how the Rams approach this Seahawks challenge? They've only got one running back to key on, and you got to believe they're going to take away to the best of their ability what Kenneth Walker did last weekend. The Seahawks were able to do that more because it was the 49ers than that they've necessarily ascended to the next level in terms of their ability to run the football. And you can be damn sure the Rams are going to, and Chris Shula, their defensive coordinator, are going to look to try and take that away. Kobe Turner is an absolute game wrecker. He's playing at his best in the biggest games. Their secondary has stepped up as well. And again, what they will want to do is, as any team would want to do playing the Seahawks, put Seattle in a hole and make Sam Darnold have to throw to win the game. Because that's clearly not what the Seahawks want to do. I've used this comparison before. They are a better version of this season's Eagles, where they play very, very conservatively. They don't put the ball at risk, which, by the way, is the right thing to do. Why would you if you don't have to? You give yourself the best chance to win by hanging onto the football, by not taking risks if you don't have to. They've also been forced to do that, and I think this is a critical thing by Darnold's injury. It is hampering him, and they've hidden that quite well because they defend so well and because last week they ran the ball so well. and because they were playing a really banged up 49ers team, that I think we've overlooked a couple of things here in the last couple of weeks. And I saw this highlighted by the NFL Daily podcast earlier today, and shout out to them. Sam Darnold has had 4 passing attempts of over 20 yards in the last 3 games. None of them have been completed. This was, if you remember, back in the early stages of the season, the most explosive offense in football. The offense that racked up chunk plays better than any other offense in the league, with the possible exception, and they got overtaken as the season went, of the Chicago Bears that we talked about, and that Ben Johnson explosive offense. The Seattle Seahawks, it's not been taken away from them. It's just not available to them because Darnold isn't able to put the ball up like that, which means they can't take full advantage of Rashid Shaheed and what he was brought in to do, apart from what he contributes on special teams. And we saw a sterling example of that last week in his kickoff return against the Bills. You saw what Jackson Smith and Jigba was held to last week, because they don't have that 20, 30, 40-yard receiving threat from Njigba anymore. Not that he can't make it happen, but that they just can't get the ball to him in those situations. And if you force the Seahawks to have to do that, it's just not there. And you can absolutely bet that that's what the Rams are going to do. Having said all that, I think we've seen the Seahawks, twice in this matchup already, find ways to hurt the Rams and find ways to turn the game in their favor, even when Darnold hasn't had a good game. I mean, probably the game, and we talked about this at the time, I remember, that highlighted just how good the Seahawks were and how far they'd come on, was the one they lost to the Rams, where they went down 21-19, in spite of just about everything going wrong for them. I was really, really impressed, and I know collectively we were really, really impressed by the character they showed, by the culture they showed. This team has everything it needs to win a Super Bowl. We know that the Rams have everything they need to win a Super Bowl. I think this is just a Rams team that hasn't quite performed at that level. And the Seahawks do what we know they're capable of doing, and they take advantage of the 12th man at home. They'll just about get over the line. I don't think there'll be very much in it, but I do think it's going to be Seattle who will win the day. Shane?
I think the important thing to look at here is that matchups matter. The last 2 games that the Seahawks played against San Francisco 49ers, the Seahawks are a very physical team. Against the Niners, they brought physical football against a very battered team. And they played the game really well. They got exactly what they needed to. Every stat about this matchup is just tremendous. You actually go back to, in their all-time history, the Seahawks are 29-28 over the Rams. In that time, Seattle has scored 1,223 points. The Rams, 1,222. Incredible stat. But even in the 2 games they've played this year, the Rams have scored 58, the Seahawks have scored 57, and in those, the total yards is Rams 830, Seahawks 829. And obviously they split the series 1-1, each side of the home team winning. So this is a very, very closely fought, and even the fact that in these games, the Seahawks offense turned the ball over so much, yet they still managed to come up close in LA to a point where even though they lost, they felt good about themselves. And then being a Thursday Night Football win, the craziest Thursday Night Football game probably in history, would tell you that they're probably feeling better about this. But there's 3 areas, if we actually just look at the matchups, where I think it'll be key. Firstly, the Rams passing game. The Rams passing game, Stafford who stands in the pocket the most, more than any other quarterback. So he's actually a target for the top frontline pressure that the Seahawks will put in, and the Seahawks are very good at putting in. And not only is the Seahawks very good at putting in that frontline pressure, but they're also very good at doing it in a certain way you actually don't expect it. Against Stafford, who does the least amount of scrambles of any quarterback in the league. He's the old-fashioned pocket passer. I think that gives advantage to the Seahawks in the passing game. That linked to the fact that the Rams have become more reliant on Puka Nacua rather than spreading around the offense as much in the last few games. We were criticizing earlier in the season how reliant Seattle were on that Darnold to Jackson Smith and Jigba link, and that they weren't spreading the love a bit. Yet it's Seattle now who spread the love a bit. Jackson Smith and Jigba only took 1 pass in the first half last week, whereas the Rams, I think, are almost too hyper-focused on the Nacua passing lane, which I think gives an advantage to Seattle because their defense is strong enough and I think well-equipped to deal with that matchup. Then you have the run game. And this is very interesting because I've watched back over the last couple of games, and even just how each team is learning from game 1 to game 2. For example, the Seahawks in game 2 played very little man coverage compared to game 1 in terms of managing the pass game. But in the run game, in both instances, they missed a lot of passes. They missed the Rams offense, the Rams running backs were able to get through the Seahawks, and the Seahawks missed a lot of tackles, and more so than they do normally. And it meant that the Rams' run game was able to get yards and able to get yards in key moments. And if we're talking about matchups matter, that's an area where the Rams have been good against the Seattle defense already this year twice, and I can't see that changing. And considering that Charbonnet is out, you'd have to say that in the run game, the Rams, I would say, probably have a bit of a leg up. But it's the passing game against the Seattle defense is, I guess, the LA defense that I find the most difficult to figure out. Sam Darnold versus that LA defense, who the LA defense has given up almost 27 points on average in their last 8 games. They have not been playing good in the second half of this season. But Sam Darnold hates to see the Rams coming against him. He's given up 6 turnovers already to this team. Yes, he managed to get the confidence-building victory on Thursday Night Football when he came up there in the second half, in the second game that they played the season. But do you think that Sean McVay and all the coaches in that Rams setup who saw the Seattle come into their territory and feel good about themselves after losing and then beating them in a game where they really should not have beaten them, the Seahawks are now holders of the 1 seed that should rightfully be the Rams in their mind after that game? Do you think that the Rams are coming into this with a way to bring out the best defensive performance they've played all season against a quarterback that they've played well against in the last 3 games they've played? If you go back to Sam Darnold's game for the Vikings last year, I think it's all there for the Rams to come in here and really make Sam Darnold blow up. We always wonder if there's going to be a game where Sam Darnold has a blow up game. And I know you were mentioning earlier on, Connor, the stats that Sam Darnold just does not go for deep passes in the last few games. He's been a bit more conservative and letting his wide receivers get the yards after catch, which has worked very well. It's a worthwhile tactic. But I have to wonder, is there a point in the second half where Darnold feels like he has to start going for more deep passes because Charbonnet isn't getting the run? Both of these quarterbacks rely so much on play action. But play action only works if you have an excellent run game. And hey, obviously Kenneth Walker is still there for the Seahawks, excellent running back in his own right, but it completely changes the run game, which changes the play action game for Seattle, which changes how often Darnold's going to try to go for the deep ball, I think. And it leaves him susceptible to a lot of these interceptions and turnovers and just sloppiness, which has made him blow up against the Rams already, twice this year, in fact. But he got away with it 1.5 times, if you think about it. So I think this is a matchup where Sam Darnold is destined to lose. And I missed a trick here earlier because I have my Patriots jersey for my AFC pick. For my NFC pick, Brian's going to hate me for this, I'm going for the Rams. So let's have a Super Bowl 53 rematch, shall we?
I think it's okay, Shane, because you're not wearing the jersey. Brian objects to people wearing the jerseys of rival teams. You're allowed to touch it, and maybe you should have worn gloves because Brian can be a little bit fastidious.
There he is enjoying himself, actually wearing the jersey. Is that my cue, Connor, to come
That's
in?
your cue. We're split, Brian, and you got the casting vote.
Okay, well, Shane, you said what was it? He got away for a game and a half. He got away for a game and a quarter because at the end of the third quarter of that game in December, they were 23-14 down, and he had less than 150 yards thrown. I'm referring to Sam Darnold. He finished on 247. Matthew Stafford in that game finished on 427 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think there's an argument that you could say the Rams should have blown them out in both games this season because the Rams weren't on their game the first time round, and people were, yes, including ourselves, were lauding up to how well Seattle battled to stay in the game, opportunity to win, but they had turned over Sam Darnold 4 times in that game. In the second game, the miraculous 2-point conversion, like it still should have counted. I'm still not entirely sure whether it was the right decision. I know we get into refereeing decisions every week, including me and Connor in particular. So let's not jump back into that one. But like, just so many things went in the Seahawks' favor in that fourth quarter. And I imagine McVay after that game would have said, "Oh, this is a terrible loss. It's a sickener. Inevitably, it's going to cost us the 1 seed." It did. However, we'll see these guys again. And if we play in the manner in which we played for 3 quarters and can continue that for 4, we can do well. And I thought, bearing in mind how well the Bears offense has played in the second half of games over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and the heroics that Caleb Williams has put up, and people are talking about that great touchdown at the end, and it was in its own right. I still think the Rams actually played quite well defensively over the course of the game. You're fair to own tonight, Connor, about the fact that the big stops on 4th down. And I think the Rams defense is slightly underrated in this game. And I'm going to go back to what Connor actually said earlier. He's saying about the fact that Sam Darnold's numbers aren't jumping off the page. He's had no receptions over 20 yards. But what happens if that injury actually is there as a real concern and it becomes a shootout game? Do we genuinely believe that Sam Darnold is the guy that can go toe-to-toe with Matthew Stafford? I don't. So I'm not going to actually deliberate for much longer. I'm actually with Shane. I'm with the Rams. I believe it's the Rams. So for me, it's very different direction. I have a Rams, Broncos. And before we do close out, that's the question I think we all have to answer. So
I think it's a great question, and Rory's thrown it in there. How are you, Rory? Good to hear from you. What two teams' styles will make the most entertaining Super Bowl for the benefit of anyone listening rather than watching? Styles make fights, as you say, Rory. For me, if Bo Nix was fit, I'd say Broncos Rams. I'd love to see the Broncos go up against the Rams. I'd love to see how Stafford and McVay would approach that Denver defense. I'd also love to see how Bo Nix and the Broncos would go up against the Rams defense. And you want to see two great quarterbacks at the top of their game. I think that would have been a great matchup. So I'm gonna default to Rams Patriots as the matchup that's the best match of styles. However, I would kind of like to see Patriots Seahawks as the trilogy of Super Bowls. I think that would be a nice rivalry. I'll throw it out to you, gents.
I'll jump in. Sorry. I agree with Connor. Once I pick Broncos Rams to win on the weekend, my preference would be to see a Patriots Rams Super Bowl because McVay has won a Super Bowl, but let's not forget he got schooled by the Patriots. And I know it's a different regime, different organization. He was inexperienced going in there, and Belichick, clearly had him in his back pocket throughout the course of the game. It feels like a few rights of, he used to right a few wrongs on that particular performance. So that would be intriguing conversation leading up to it. But the styles of both teams, I think if we had a Patriots-Rams Super Bowl in Santa Clara, I think we'd be all in for a treat.
Yeah, I have to say, it is what I picked, but I mean, just fundamentally speaking, and maybe I'm speaking as a typical journalist who wants an easy article to write. The MVP race this year is between Drake May and Matt Stafford. So why don't we let the Super Bowl be between Drake May and Matt Stafford? I think for me that would make the greater matchup. And I think either way, like a Patriot, like all these matchups have great stories within them. Patriots Seahawks, as a lot in it as well. But I mean, the having the star quarterbacks just face off, new generation, old generation, all that kind of thing. I think would be a great watch.
Last word to you, Kieran.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Rams Pats. You want to see teams loaded with offensive weapons. When it comes to the Super Bowl, everyone talks about tactics and defensive struggles, and we want to see the ball being thrown out. We want to see touchdowns. We want to see exciting play. I think if you had the Rams and Pats in there, I think you would get that.
Let's go. In just a couple of days' time, we'll know who is going to be matching up in Super Bowl 60. We'll have lots of coverage between now and the end of Championship Sunday and all our instant reaction and everything you've come to know and love and expect from the Irish NFL show between.